All right. Well, today I wanted to talk about a period of time that I was bullied at work as a sub 5 male. So, back in 2012, I was going to a university in the middle of nowhere. This town had one stoplight, a Walmart, one gas station, a towny bar, and a bar where all the college students went. I had worked at the lone gas station in town. This was a gas station that had about 24 gas pumps and sold a variety of food like pizza, hoagies, meatball sandwiches, tater tots, you name it. This was my third year of university, and I just got this job because I needed some money at the time. So after interviewing, I got the job. In this town, pretty much anyone with a pulse would be hired. This was like literally a town where cousins would marry their own cousins. I'm not even joking. It had that vibe to it, and it was like a real thing. I remember after the interview, the manager called me up about a day later, and he had asked me what size my uniform was. He then said quickly after, "Oh wait, I know you're definitely extra large," and then started chuckling. At the time, I was an extra large, so his guess was correct. And he was the person who interviewed me, so he could obviously see I was very much overweight. However, this uniform was like super, super baggy and made me look even like more enormous than I was at the time. At the time, I was around 300 pounds, and I was balding in like the Norwood 3, Norwood 4 range. I had like a massively receding hairline. It was probably like more like Norwood 4, to be honest. I still had like the center forelock, like that was pretty thick, but I just had this really bad receding hairline with like grown out hair. It was brutal to see old pictures. On the first day of training, the same manager had introduced me around to a few of the other workers. Most of the other workers were like college students or people who just lived in the town. The manager was a really funny guy, honestly, and he just liked to joke around with people. He wasn't really like a mean person, but he introduced me to the people that were working that night by my name, and then he followed up with, "Yeah, he just competed in The Biggest Loser." I kind of laughed it off. It was really my first day meeting everybody. And I mean, it was kind of a fitting joke. I was really overweight at the time, and I looked like I definitely could have been on The Biggest Loser. I really could have been on that show, to be honest. I would have fit right in at the time. He takes me to the other side of the store. There's like two sides of the store. There's like the cash register side, and then there's like the food side. So he takes me over to like the cashier side, and he introduces me by my name, and then he cracks another joke and he says, "He's on Megan's Law." And then he kind of like chuckles and laughs again. He had a very sick sense of humor, and when we went in the back, I pulled him aside and pretty much told him like, "Hey, I understand you're joking. You seem like a funny guy, but I'm not cool with a joke like that." He was kind of taken back, and he did actually apologize and said that he was only kidding. And, I just kind of let it go. So that manager was also a bit on the heavier side. He definitely wasn't 300 pounds, but I guess he definitely had some heftiness to him. He was around 6'2" also, and he was fairly average looking for context on his looks. Looking back, I knew that he was just joking about like competing on The Biggest Loser or being on Megan's Law. But, honestly, the fact that I was so overweight and like visibly balding really bad really like made those jokes kind of cut deep. At the time, I wasn't black pill aware. And, when people crack jokes about someone's appearance, it's definitely brutal, and it makes you realize how unattractive traits like being overweight or balding really are. These unattractive traits, like people see them and they don't give off signs of good genetics. And, after confronting the manager in a professional way, he still cracked jokes at me, but they weren't super demeaning towards me. He kind of cracked jokes at everybody, but, I feel like he cracked more jokes towards me more of the time. Whenever someone comes at you with malicious jokes, something I've realized is like sometimes you need to laugh it off and just kind of take it on the chin. And other times, for certain jokes, like other times you do need to stand up for yourself. What I learned being unattractive at the time is that people will crack jokes at your expense a lot of the time to see how much you'll take. And sometimes, if it's like a super, mean-spirited joke, you do need to kind of stand up for yourself kind of immediately. Otherwise, they're going to continue to do it. There's definitely a group mentality. And I think when someone's like if someone's like the unattractive person, I think some people, for whatever reason, they like to, continue like joking on that person and even bullying them to an extent. So you need to stand up for yourself at the end of the day. So about a week later, there was a college girl training me on my last day of training. I was about to put a pizza in the oven, and she yelled, "What are you doing?" It was like a sausage pizza, and I forgot to put the sausages on it. But the thing was, it was like a very angry, like sharp pitched yell. It definitely got people's attention because I remember there was one other person like working in our section, and like they were like frazzled by this. And then I remember the cashiers like looking over in our direction, and there was like a line of people at the cashier's stand, and like everyone just like turned and looked. And it was like really it's kind of embarrassing when something like that happens. She then said, "You have to put the sausages on it. What the heck are you doing?" Yeah, she then like took the sausages and literally like plopped them down on this pizza like really hard. And then she put it in the oven. She slammed the oven shut. Like it was a really hard just like slam. I've never seen something like this happen before. And she then looked back at me and she gave me this like really dirty look of like complete disgust and anger. And then she immediately like took her gloves off and like kind of like ran into the back pretty much. Like kind of like walked really aggressively into the back of the back of the place. And it was just like she made a whole scene over like me forgetting to put sausages on the pizza. It was crazy to deal with. A few minutes later, I actually head to the back because I needed to grab something, and I overhear her telling the manager, "He keeps messing up. He's like so slow with making sandwiches. Like, I hate working with him. Like, please don't put me on the same schedule with him. Like, seriously." Like, I heard this. Like, she even like looked back like while I was like getting what I needed. And to be honest, like I honestly like hated making sandwiches, and like I preferred to work on the register. I told the manager at the time that I wanted to work at the register, even though like working on the register was also brutal, but it really wasn't as bad as like this super fast-paced environment where like you're constantly making like these meatball sandwiches, throwing pizzas in the oven, making zeps, making hoagies. Like there was so many, like this gas station sold such a variety of food that like it was really hard to like keep track of everything. I honestly like that was the worst job I've ever had in my life. And, thank God I only worked there for like 4 months. It was super brutal. I remember that I had to walk a pretty far distance. Like my apartment was about like a mile away from the gas station. So after that shift, I really was like, I realized that I really hated this job, and I did not know how long I was going to last. And walking back after my shifts to my apartment were like some of the loneliest, like depressing walks I've ever been on. Like I was like 21 at the time, and I really had no idea like what direction my life was going. And it was just really brutal. And then at the time I was like so out of breath too. Even just like walking a mile back to my apartment was just so really, really hard to do, to put it lightly. So a few weeks later, I was in the back in one of the offices eating before my shift with the door closed. And I hear the same girl who yelled at me for the pizza talking to another girl. She had asked, like, "Who are we working with tonight?" And, she said my name, and the girl asked, "Oh, is that the big fat guy?" She then replies back saying, yeah, he's got the weird haircut too, and that she hates working with me. And she started telling the girl about like the pizza and how I'm like really slow on sandwiches and just like talking about that for like 10 minutes straight. And she, like I said, she just kept on saying he doesn't know how to do anything. Like it's going to be like a long night. When you're overweight and balding, or you have any sort of like unattractive trait, especially in the workplace, you have the Phalo effect going against you. Any mistake that you make is going to be criticized and it's going to be amplified. When you're unattractive, you really need to be much better at your job to get like any sort of respect sometimes. I hate that, that's the way it is. Like I try to treat people equally. I try to treat people the same, show respect, to people, and you really try to judge them on their character. But that's kind of the way it is when you're unattractive. You really have to be on the ball at work. You can't be, messing up sandwiches and messing up pizzas, and you just don't have that liberty as like someone who's more conventionally attractive. In regards to the haircut comment, at this location we didn't wear hats. So at the time, I had a really bad receding hairline, as I mentioned, and my crown was even starting to thin. The way I tried to combat this is I tried to grow out my hair in like my mid scalp and crown to try to like cover the receding hairline, but it just did not work, and it looked super sparse, and like the sides of my hair were like grown out even longer. Like looking back at old pictures, like I really look like, the clown from It. I had no clue about finasteride or Rogaine or like Topic or anything related to like improving the look of your hair. This definitely hurt, but I tried to shrug it off. About midway through the shift, the same girl, told me that I needed to take out the trash and sweep the floor of the store. I just really wasn't having it that night, and I told her that I wasn't assigned to do that. She then replies back saying, well, you suck at sandwiches and we're really backed up, so you really just need to do it. She had like a huge like scowl look on her face, and I honestly needed a little bit of fresh air, so it really wasn't like the worst thing in the world. So I begrudgingly went outside to take the trash from like the bins near the gas pumps. And honestly, like taking out the trash, like particularly for this job at this gas station, it almost like felt freeing to like not be in the store. Because I'm telling you, like when you're making this food, you're around all these ovens, and you're wearing these like baggy uniforms. Like you're like sweating hot, and you can like barely breathe sometimes. So I like took my good old time like with these trash bins. I don't know. I guess the store was getting busy that night, and the girl came outside and yelled, "Get back in here. You're just taking so long. Like, what's taking so long?" I kind of had at this point, and I yelled back. Like, there was like even customers like near her, and I was like, mind your own business. Like, I'm taking my time. Like, just go back inside. So like while I was sweeping, she kept telling me to hurry up. I was sleeping in like an area that was a little bit away from where the customers would get, kind of pick up their orders. And she just kept telling me to hurry up, and she was just talking a bunch of crap to the other girl that was with us. I just kept ignoring her, and I didn't even tell her that my shift was over. And once I was done like sweeping the floor, I just like threw my gloves in the trash can and just walked out. Normally, like, when you're ending a shift, you usually, tell people you're out for the day. But with this amount of disrespect, I just walked out. So the last part of it came to like when I came in a few days later, the other manager calls me into the office and basically says, so I want to talk to you. I hear you're not being a team player. Tell me about that. Walking into work that day, just like walking in, I was really at the point where I was really contemplating quitting. And I was just really not in a good mood that day, just for, how I was being treated pretty much every time I went into that job. I then asked him like what he meant by that. I really just didn't want to hear it. And he comes back with, well, I'm hearing a number of complaints from different people that you're not doing your job correctly. You're messing up orders and you're being really negative. To be honest, like I was a pretty positive person, especially at the start until I started being mistreated constantly. For context, the girl was pretty average looking. Surprisingly enough, she was a little bit on the overweight side. And she was really nothing special looks wise. She just like viewed me as below her because at the time I was really overweight, and my haircut, like I can't tell you like how bad it looked. Like it really looked like I was balding really bad, just of the way I grew out the sides and tried to comb it over. It was just like my appearance was like at the worst it's ever been in my entire life. But I told my manager my side of the story, and he said, "Okay, well, here's your options, bud." He literally said that when someone calls you bud, especially if it's like a manager or someone that's like higher than you, it's really like, having worked in the corporate world for many years, it's really like a way for that person to try to show dominance, like subtly. And right when he said that, like I mentally checked out, and I was like, I'm done. I basically tell him like, yeah, I think I'm done. I don't want to work at a place like this. And yeah, it was nice working with you. I basically just took off my gloves and, gave him my badge and pretty much just walked out. I remember on the way out, he was telling me like, please come back and like give me your uniform. And I just completely ignored him. It honestly felt good to walk home that day. More of the story, when you're unattractive, you have to be prepared that you're going to be mistreated in a lot of workplaces, especially if it's like, if you're working at, in fast food, or you're working in, some sort of like, gas station, or like lower skilled type job. But even in like corporate America, or, if you're like a laborer, you're gonna deal with, you're going to deal with negative comments. You're going to deal with, subtle jabs. And you need to just go in there with the mindset of you need to stand up for yourself. And, if you're dealing with a very toxic workplace, especially if you're someone that's very unattractive, sometimes quitting and getting out of that situation is, ultimately what's best. In a future video, I will talk about my experience with the halo effect in the workplace. After losing over 120 pounds and getting 2 hair transplants. It's really interesting, my experience over the past many years, like working in corporate America. You can, in being much more attractive, I really look back to that year of those couple months of working at this gas station, and it's like a completely night and day experience. And really the only difference, and if you're treated positively or you're treated negatively, ultimately really comes down to your looks. Obviously, like, how you do your job at your skill set, obviously that ultimately matters, and, how you're judged from like your manager's perspective. But how people treat you in the workplace, a lot of the times is, I would say, about like 80 to 90% correlated with how you specifically look. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like, feel free to subscribe, and comment down below any bullying you ever experienced in the workplace. Until next time, take care.